there is a difference between AI that writes and a technical writer that uses AI to write, right? So, so if you use AI purely for creating documentation, then AI does not understand the product the way a human would. It is really important to put real cases or scenarios, practical scenarios for the users to understand. So in every documentation, I put real cases or practical scenarios where a user might get stuck and then what they should do, not just click on the save button.
Welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Welcome everyone to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast.
Sure.
Today with us we have Rutva Safi, Senior Technical Writer with Gantner. Hi Rutva, welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. How are you doing today?
Hello, Gauri. Thank you so much for inviting me for the podcast today. And I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
All good, all good. So it's all going great on my side. And once again, thank you for your support in this episode. So before we start with anything, how did you get into this wonderful journey of technical writing? Who was your inspiration or motivation? Can you shed some lights on that, please?
Yes, sure. Well, it is quite an interesting story. I would say my career graph has never been linear, and it was something I did not plan at all. So I'm an engineer by trade, and I started my career as a developer. But soon I realized that I do not have any inclination towards coding. So I moved to quality analyst because I did not want to leave the tech industry, as I'm always fascinated by technology. And after being a quality analyst, I then moved to business analyst. I just kept on exploring until I find my passion for what I'm doing, until I like my job, what I'm doing. So yeah, that happened for like 1 year. And meanwhile, I started writing, blogs and articles. I created my own website where I used to express my thoughts and opinions. And that's when one of my friends went through my blog and said, "Hey, Rutva, why don't you combine your writing skills with your tech knowledge?" And then I said, "Wow, that's a wonderful idea. And I would definitely would like to give it a go, So I ended up in content writing and strategy role at an IT industry, at an IT organization. And that's where, I started writing about different technologies, the next gen technologies like Internet of Things, machine learning, AI, virtual and augmented reality. And I quite enjoyed doing that. And then, so when I was working for this organization, we had this technical documentation project that came in, that was an in-house project. So my then tech lead approached me and said, "Rutva, why don't you take up this task of technical documentation, because you have got the background for this?" And I thought I have that utility player experience as a developer and quality analyst. So I can look into a complex product and actually know what was happening under the hood. So that's when I realized that I actually kind of, have this ability, this unique ability to understand the heavy engineering logic and translate it into simpler, clearer words or document putting it on a page in a way that the user who is sitting on the other side of the screen can actually understand it without any confusion. So that's when I recognized my passion for writing and how much I enjoy writing technical documentation. So from then on, I stepped into purely technical writing roles. And currently, I'm pretty happy to be at Gantner and working as a technical writer. So that is pretty fascinating for me.
That's a good combination, right? Engineering background with technical writing ability.
Correct, absolutely. That helps a lot to understand from that persona and then write it. So,
Uh-huh.
well, it works pretty well.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to start straight away with the concept of
Hmm.
AI because that's the hot
Hmm.
topic now. So, AI
Absolutely.
is rapidly changing the way
Hmm.
documentation is created and consumed. You know this very well, right? Now, how do
Definitely.
you, as a senior technical writer, how do you
Mhm.
see the role of technical writers evolve in this AI era?
Well, that is $1 million question because right now we see that AI is basically changing, the entire industry, like all these industries, pretty fast, and it's evolving at a rate that we would not have expected some years
Mm-hmm.
back. So I would say that I believe that AI is like a collaborative assistant, with which you can move ahead and continue your work, not just make it faster but efficient. And I hear in my DMs on LinkedIn and a lot of posts I see, people are just afraid that AI is going to take the job of technical writers, but I
Uh-huh.
believe that is not going to happen in the near future. If
Yeah.
you see, so there are two sides of a coin, right? Similarly, AI has two sides. I would say that when you start using AI, then it can help you in a lot of things to generate your document in a way that you want to put it across to different personas, basically.
Mm.
And that's how AI can be pretty much helpful to you, because currently what I do is I have this complex scenario. I want to just break it down into something that is pretty clear and useful for the users. Then I just take help of AI and it just does these things in few seconds, rather than I have to spend like an entire day or something like that. So
Yeah.
that is there. On the other side, I would say AI is something, uh, like if I take an example, I just read on LinkedIn, there's this person called Carl Isaac. He writes pretty good about AI and all technical documentation. So I read this line which really touched my heart. It says, there is a difference between AI that writes and a
Mhm.
technical writer that uses AI to write, right?
Okay.
So, yeah. So if you use AI purely for creating documentation, then AI does not understand the product the way a human would, right?
Mm.
AI would not understand the empathy of a person who is using that product. So imagine someone sitting on the front desk at an airport giving boarding passes to the travelers, and the system is broke. Now that person is in a panic situation and frustrated, like that there will be a queue of people standing for a
Mm.
couple of minutes if the issue is not fixed. So in this, scenarios are not understood by AI. It cannot understand the real scenarios, practical scenarios. So there
True.
I would say, yeah, they would say that it is really important for humans to step in, and that's where we come into the
Mm.
picture. We understand the edge cases, the real scenarios. Then we also, like I said, we understand the product pretty well. We have that empathy factor. So
Mm.
all of this combined with AI would definitely help documentation, to move further in the direction that it needs to be, right?
Very well, yeah,
So
very well said. So it's
yeah,
always a combination of human in the loop plus the AI,
yes,
isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
great.
That is correct.
So is your documentation for global audience, or what's the nature of your current role? And tell me about how your documentation process works.
Yeah, sure. So, well, starting with your question, yes, so we have a global product. So, our documentation pretty much touches every country wherever our customers are in.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's when we have, the role of localization comes into the picture, which I will like to visit again after some time once I explain my process. So,
Sure.
let's begin with that. So, my documentation process, does not begin with just writing. A lot of
Mm.
people would think technical writers just write, so they
Mm.
start their processes with just writing, but no, that's not the case. I start my process by sitting in on the sprint calls,
Mm.
and that's when you get to know about what is happening in the product. What are the features that are being built in the product and what is changing. So
Mm.
that is your first step where you gather information. You ask questions to the team in those sprint calls and meetings. That's where the information gathering step begins with. And then after that, I myself play around with the product, because I believe that it is really important for you to understand, in order to understand the product, to play with it, right? So
Yeah,
if you don't consider yourself as a first real user of that product, then I do not think that we can write the documentation properly and
very
clearly
true.
for the users.
Yeah.
So that is the next step. Now further, I start writing the document, and that happens along with the development of the product and not
Mm-hmm.
after it, because I
Mm.
believe that documentation is a part of a product, right? So it is not something that you consider it as an afterthought. So I start writing, and when I start writing, I loop in my business analysts and product managers to understand the edge cases, because I believe that it is really important to put real cases or scenarios, practical scenarios, for the users to understand. So in every documentation, I put real cases or practical scenarios where a user might get stuck, and then what they should do. Not just click
Mm.
on the save button, but why do you have to click on the save button? What will do when you click it, and what will happen if you do not click on that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, simply take an example of a dummy corporate organization, and my company basically is in locker management. So I take an example of 1,000 lockers in that organization, and then link it with the real cases of the user. So this is my
Okay.
process, and my process does not end here, because a lot of people would forget about the part where they have to think about information architecture, where they have to think about consistency of the terminologies in the
Mm-hmm.
documentation throughout it, so the user does not get confused, because somewhere you're using some word and the other way you're using something else. So
Correct.
that does not suffice. So that's and most important, whom you are writing for. Because if you consider in SaaS businesses, generally it's not one person which is end user who's going to read the document. It would be end user who wants a solution of a task, versus an IT admin who would like to know, how do I configure the whole system, versus a developer who just wants to integrate, the product with the API via the API documentation. So you have to understand different personas, and
Yep.
then the whole process becomes complete. And quickly coming back to the first point, which was localization, as I said, my product is global. So the cherry on the top is, from the beginning, you write your documentation in a way that when it will be localized, then it does not forget or leave the context that we are talking about. Because
Mm-hmm.
there is a thin line between translation and localization. We are not just translating our documents for the global
Yep.
audience, but we are localizing it, which means we have to take care of the cultural nuances. We have to take care
Yep.
of the tone and concept. Because for example, there is this phrase called burning platform. First of all, we don't use idioms in documentation, but even if you do, then it's a bad practice. But to give an example, there is this burning platform idiom that we,
Mm.
in English, it means a dire situation in which you need to act rapidly. But when it is translated to German or Japanese, then it
Yep.
literally means nothing. And that's when
Difference.
you
Yeah.
lose your customers. When, yeah, so because in European market, especially, countries like Germany, France, they are pretty much, rigid about their products being there, or the documentation being there in the local language. And
Mm-hmm.
they would definitely invest in a product which has documentation, right? Localized
Mm-hmm.
products. So I think that ends the process. The localization part, along with everything else, ends the process of my process of documenting. So that's, yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. You shared a very, very interesting perspective on translation versus localization. Now, just circling back to the same topic, What do you think are some of the common mistakes companies make when creating documentation for global audience? Because you got ample experience in creating such contents, catering to multiple countries
Mhm.
and customers across the globe.
Mhm.
What do you think is a common mistake that most companies do when writing contents for such
Mhm.
audiences?
Yeah, so that's again a very good point. And to throw some light on that, I would say that organizations are not, uh, first of all, like I said, many organizations they do not understand the difference between translation and localization. And
Mm,
the first mistake that they start making is when you are creating a document from the beginning, when you know you have a global audience or global customers, then
yep,
it starts from the beginning. Like when you start writing the documentation, you have to take care of the tone. You have to keep your document pretty simple. So when it is localized or translated in another language, that then it does not change the meaning. Because I would say you have a customer across the globe, and then I would say if you write a document, a good documentation which does not have this gap, then a customer sitting either in Mumbai, Melbourne, or Munich, they can all interpret it correctly if you take care of few things. First of all, I would give you an example. Like I said, do not use any idioms, because it is
mm,
really difficult when it is translated to other languages. It loses the meaning, right? So customers are confused when it is localized. Then another thing is date time format. So you may see, like in Europe and the USA, there is this difference of a date. So if you say 01/02/2026, so it could either mean 1st of February, or it could mean 2nd of January. Now, if you
correct.
do not mention this properly in the document, which time zone are you talking about, then someone sitting in the USA will think, okay, it is as per my timing. And that
Yeah.
basically could really, really, really goof up, things when they are using product. Because sometimes when they have reports that are scheduled, right, in a product, and if they accidentally think that, okay, this time zone means my time zone, but it does, in reality it did not, then they may not even get report schedule on the right time, and that could
Mm,
really affect their business. So these are the things we really need to take care of, along with the cultural nuances. So when the product goes, or the documentation, like I said, documentation is part of a product. So when the documentation reaches the customer sitting in any part of the world, then I think it should be interpreted in the same way, like the source document wants to convey it to the user, right?
got it. Yeah.
So yeah, so I would believe that most organizations make these mistakes of
Mm.
missing out on these points. But if it is taken care of from the first step, then the source document itself is pretty strong, that even when it is localized, the customer sitting anywhere in the world would interpret it correctly.
Very good. Very, very, very well said. And yeah, I think that's one of the common challenges we do often hear when we have documentation
Yeah.
serving multilingual audiences, how to set
Yes.
the context or preserve the context even when your contents are being translated. Yeah.
Yes.
So moving
True.
on to the rapid fire round questions, any useful documentation resources you could recommend to us?
Yes, definitely. So I follow these conferences, Write the Docs and TC World, which are really good. And then there are a few personalities on LinkedIn. One I said, Carl I said, he writes really
Yep.
good about documentation, technical writing, and shares some tips and tricks. And you might have heard quite common, Tom Johnson. His
Yeah.
name is quite common. I also see a lot of people following him, so that is quite good. Apart from that podcast, I definitely watch all of your podcasts, because this
Oh,
is
thank
quite
you.
insightful. Yes, and then there is this the Not Boring Tech Writer podcast, which is also really good. So I also follow them. And yeah, these are the resources I would definitely recommend to everybody to go through. for enhancing their knowledge.
Thank you. That means a lot to us personally, and also to other authors you've just mentioned. And now, one question is one word that comes to your mind when you hear documentation.
Foundation, because I
Mhm.
think documentation is the foundation of a product. It is like an invisible infrastructure of structure, standards, and tools that we use for documentation to make it more reliable and to make it more clear for the audience, global audience to understand.
Foundation. They always say lay the foundation very strong. So,
That is
yeah,
definitely true. Yeah,
yeah. Last
yeah,
question
I
for the
agree.
day is a piece of advice you would give to your 20-year-old self.
A piece of advice I would give to my 20-year-old self is keep learning, keep exploring, and do not be afraid of, especially in the initial phase of your professional career or your journey,
Mm-hmm.
because unless and until you don't get into the roles, that you are exploring, you won't be able to think from their perspective. Like being a developer, do not be afraid to be a developer, do not be afraid to be a quality analyst and a business analyst, because all of this will give you the mindset that you need as a technical writer to put everything
Right.
clearly for different personas. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say just keep going, do not be afraid. It is a part of your journey and just utilize it. That's all I would like to
Fantastic.
say now.
So, Rudwa, thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts and your great, amazing journey with us. And before we say bye to our audiences, anything else I missed to ask you today?
I think you pretty much covered everything. All I wanted to say to the audience is just focus on how you can use the AI technology as a friend, as a collaborative support, and do not be afraid that it is going to replace us. That is not going to happen. So I would like to convey that message. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, that message is needed a lot these days. So thank you for
Mhm.
bringing the topic again,
Yeah.
and all the very best for your future and for the number of documents you're going to produce to serve your customers as well. So all the very best for your projects, Rutva. Take care.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Gauri. Take care. Thank you for
Thank
inviting.
you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.